Tonight, we present concepts that come out of the work of Visions Incorporated from UC Berkeley, Professor John Powell, and PICO's Reverend Michael Ray Matthews. The three themes and concepts that we will explore tonight include, number one, 4 levels of analysis and change. Number 2, implicit bias. Number 3, structural racism. We focus tonight on how race operates at personal, interpersonal, structural, and cultural levels. The personal level is about the values, beliefs, and feelings at work inside our own minds, our biases, both conscious and unconscious. The interpersonal level examines the way that we interact and our behavior with others. And the structural level considers the impact of rules, practices, policies, and procedures of our institutions. At the cultural level, we look at how the personal, interpersonal, and institutional shape the broader, unseen dimensions, the unwritten rules about who and what is beautiful, what is truth, and what is right.
White supremacy is the belief that white people are superior to those of all other races, especially the black race, and should therefore dominate society. This way of thinking is detrimental to all people, white people included, because it is a lie. As it relates to race, Reverend Michael Ray Matthews summarizes these 4 levels that we've named this way. Racism still lives like an unseen spiritual force in the atmosphere and in our psyches, impacting our thoughts, assumptions, and behaviors, the quality of our relationships, the policies and practices of our institutions and our culture. In ways both explicit and implicit, we communicate to one another worth and belonging in our communities. What people of color are experiencing in our communities is a message about whether or not they belong, whether or not their lives are valued, and as some might say, whether or not they matter.
2 concepts to hold along with the 4 levels of analysis are implicit bias and structural racism. Implicit bias is about the association that we hold about particular people and the people groups that are expressed automatically without our conscious awareness. Studies on implicit bias have shown that people who explicitly intend to be inclusive and welcoming can hold unconscious biases that impact their interactions with others. This is mostly seen on a personal or an interpersonal level. Understanding implicit bias has been important in the movement to heal relationships between law enforcement and their communities because it considers how even well-intentioned people can act on biases without fully knowing. The good news is that the science also says that we can retrain our minds and unlearn biases. And as Jane Elliott has said, you're not born racist, you're born into a racist society. Racism is a learned affliction, and anything that is learned can be unlearned.
Structural racism considers how the process of rules, practices, policies, procedures, customs, and other institutional arrangements create, maintain, and reflect racialized outcomes, benefiting one race more than another. The basic point is that racialized outcomes like health disparities and academic achievement disparities do not require explicitly racist individuals. When a so-called race-neutral policy still results in disparities that are racialized, this is structural racism. Rather than being on the personal and interpersonal levels, structural racism is analyzed at the structural and cultural levels. It helps us to examine what is happening in our communities and institutions without having to point fingers at an individual person as racist, although in some cases he or she may be. It lets us see how our systems operate in ways that are usually invisible to us. We hope that tonight these ideas help us to develop a common language as we have this series of conversations together. You have, I believe, a handout with you, with your agenda, that has a list of movies you might want to watch, books you might want to read, videos that you can find on YouTube, maybe some podcasts you'll want to listen to, as well as a link for other resources that have been developed, including a glossary of language. We invite you to study them at home on your own, but maybe even better, in community, in your religious communities, at your schools, at your other organizations. We believe that structural racism has been historically at the core of American society and at the core of the system of policing in America. But systems change when individuals work together to change them. Tonight, we are working together to end the structural racism in these systems.
And we'll end. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, our goal is to create a beloved community. And this will require a qualitative change in our souls as well as a qualitative change in our lives. So let us claim that vision tonight as we engage in this important conversation.